This might be the best 5.5-inch monitor and recorder in its price range. I wasn't expecting much, but was pleasantly surprised when I got it, and I've really been enjoying using it. In some ways, this Shimbol MEMORY 1 can definitely compete with the almost twice as expensive Atomos Ninja V. But there is room for improvement. Let's talk about it. If you're new here, I'm Sebastian and welcome to my channel. If you've been watching my channel for a while, you probably know that I am a big fan of the Atomos Ninja V. I use it on almost every shoot, whether that's for a job or for fun. I love it for the high quality screen, the exposure tools and the ProRes recording. But I don't always need ProRes recording. The menus are not very intuitive and its build quality is also nothing to write home about. This Shimbol MEMORY 1 is almost as capable as the Ninja V and is surprisingly well built and a lot cheaper. Thanks to 01 Video for sending this to me. They don't have any input on this video. I will only ever review anything that I can make an honest review of. So I don't usually care much for unboxings of products, and I'm not going to do that now either, but I am going to show you what this monitor comes with, because I think it's a very complete package. The price of this monitor is $239, and for that you get the monitor itself, of course, but also an HDMI cable, a very decent monitor mount. It even comes with a screen protector and an SD card. The build quality of this monitor is excellent, I would say. It is fully metal and feels very solid. The locking mechanism for the battery has a very reassuring click, and there's no chance of it accidentally coming off. It has a power button and 3 function buttons on the top that I'll get to in a minute. It has 2 1/4-inch mounting points, one on the bottom and one on the side. This makes mounting it very flexible, although I would like to have seen another one on the top, but I guess that's a bit difficult because of the function buttons there. It weighs less than the Ninja V without a drive, at 270 grams, and is overall a bit smaller, while the 1080p touchscreen itself is actually a little bigger with 5.5-inch, and the specs tell me that it's a 2000 nit screen, which is twice as bright as a Ninja V screen. I have no way of measuring that, but I can see it's definitely brighter. It's flexible when it comes to power. You can either use a Sony MPF style battery or use a DC barrel cable to use it with DTAP, for example. You can also use a dummy battery, like this one for the Ninja V, and power it through DC that way. I like that flexibility. On one side it has an SD card slot for recording and a headphone out port. On the other side it has the DC in port, an HDMI in and an HDMI out port. And this is pass-through, meaning if you feed 4K into the HDMI in, it'll also give 4K out. And on the bottom there's a USB-C port for firmware updates. Unfortunately, it's not for power. In terms of tools, you get everything you'd want from such a monitor. For checking exposure and white balance, you get waveform, RGB parade, histogram and vectorscope, and you can set the opacity of these tools as well. In addition, you get zebras and false color overlay. You also get customizable frame markers, grids, anamorphic D-squeeze, and you can load your own LUTs into it. Of course, it also has focus peaking, customizable in sensitivity and color, and you can set it to a monochrome view, which can be helpful when trying to nail focus. There's one tool that I particularly like. That's the pinch to zoom functionality. When you turn this on, you can just use your fingers on the screen to zoom in and out. Very useful in combination with focus peaking. You can also dial in the brightness, contrast, saturation and sharpness of the screen, and even make some fine RGB adjustments. There's a menu where you can change the backlight, volume, the fan modes, and you can also format the SD card here. But one of the most useful features of this monitor, in my opinion, is the 3 custom function buttons on the top. In the menu, you can set what these buttons do. I have one set to show or hide the waveform, one to turn on the zoom function, and one to turn on or off focus peaking. But there's a lot you can choose from. I think it's great. I like physical buttons for these things. Well done, I'd say. This device can also record onto an SD card and can be triggered by the camera, if the camera supports that. You can set the quality of the recording and the file naming. It can, however, only record 1080p 60 frames a second, and it's obviously not in ProRes, but H.264 in MP4, which is a shame. I don't mind the 1080p resolution and the codec, but I wish it was possible to record in 24, 25 and 50 frames a second as well. So after a bit more testing, I found that if you shoot in 4K on the camera, and the camera puts out 4K over HDMI, it will accept it up to 30p, and it will record as well, but it will downscale it to 1080p. However, if you're shooting in 1080p on the camera, or the camera can downscale the output to 1080p like the GH6 can, then you can record in all the frame rates up to 60p in 1080p. I think the recording option is useful if you want to have a backup recording, or what I'm now using it for is for recording my camera's menus. That I don't need to be in ProRes, and it's fine to do that in 1080p. I've been using this monitor for a while and find the user interface to be quite intuitive and straightforward, apart from some little quirks that I'll get to in a second. The monitor mount that it comes with is a basic one, but works fine, and you can easily adjust the friction. The custom buttons are a really great feature of this monitor, and I hope that more brands will incorporate this in their designs. It makes it so quick to turn certain tools on or off without having to touch the screen or go through the menus. One thing I have to mention that I think is awesome about the exposure tools of this monitor, and something Atomos really needs to address and fix in the Ninja V, is that when you shoot in Vlog, it doesn't matter whether you use a monitoring LUT or not, the exposure tools will still show you the reading of the log footage. So a LUT won't change the exposure reading. Well done, 01. I talked about this Ninja V issue in my most recent livestream if you're interested. I also want to point out a few little quirks that I found using this device. The first one is the startup time. It takes a while. It's not a deal breaker for me, but it's something to be aware of. Another thing I found is in the menu structure. For example, there is an option for a monochrome live view, but that's in the exposure menu. This really needs to be in the focus peaking menu, as it is a tool that's meant to be used to make focus peaking more visible. It's not an exposure tool. Maybe they can change that in a firmware update. And there's something else. It might not bother you at all, but it does bother me. And that's incorrect naming and spelling. For example, in the marker menu, it says grip instead of grid. It doesn't take anything away from the functionality of the device, but it just bugs me because it's so easy to avoid. The last thing I found has to do with loading LUTs. It took me a while to get any LUT on there because apparently the file name of the LUTs cannot contain any spaces or special characters. It actually also says so in the manual. When you do use the right file naming, it works perfectly. In conclusion, I've not seen any monitor that can also record on the market for this price that can beat this one. With a very bright screen, all the tools you'd want, the option to record, the function buttons, the solid design, and the complete package it comes with, I think it's definitely worth considering if you're looking for an external monitor. I hope they can make some improvements through firmware, but I'll be using it a lot going forward, and I'm excited that these monitors are getting better and prices are coming down. There are links to this monitor in the description if you're interested, and if you have any questions, leave a comment. I hope this video was helpful. If so, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel, and maybe hit that notification bell, and I hope to see you next time. Thanks for watching. Even make some fine RGB adjustment. Some fine RGB adjustment. RGB adjustments.